Hello, I'm very glad to take this opportunity to share with you about China's industrialization in the past tens of years, the perspectives and the challenges we faced. So today I'm going to talk about three major topics. So one is the establishment of independent industrial system, majorly in the first 30 years since the founding of the new China. And then the second topic will be reform and opening up the policy for full modernization, more than 40 years. And lastly will be the new objectives and challenges in the future. So, regarding the first 30 years, China was founded in 1949, October, and the Communist Party of China actually was founded 28 years earlier, so in 1921. So this year, 2021, is exactly the 100-year anniversary. And starting from that until the third plenary session of the CPC's 11th Central Committee, held during December 1978, marked the beginning of the reform and opening up policy, which is the second period. So for the period one, if we look at the major statistics, the electricity, in 1949, China's population was 542 million, which was 22% of the world. And in 1978, the population increased to nearly 1 billion. Very interestingly, it was also exactly 22% of the world. But if you compare the electricity generation, so this is the power and this is the total kilowatt hour, you will see in the 30 years period, the generating power increased also around 30 times, while the total energy, electricity energy generated increased around 60%. And during the period one, in the 30 years, especially the first 5 years, actually China's industrialization started. For example, in the first 5-year plan did not started from 1950, which is the second year of the founding of New China. Why? It was because the Korean War, so economic plan was interrupted for the first 3 years. So from 1953 to 1956, the first 5-year plan completed 3 transformations, so which is the socialist transformation of China's agriculture, forming People's Commune, and then the socialist transformation of China's handicraft industry. Handicraft industry is the is no formal machine-based industry. Usually is a teacher and a student, they work together, is family-based. And then the third one will be equipment-based, is transformation of China's capitalist industry and commerce. So they hire workers. And during this 5-year plan, China achieved a rapid economic recovery and quick growth. Of course, this period was also strongly supported by the former Soviet Union. And the major achievement during the past 30 years it was reflected in the defense industry. So most remarkable include the atomic and hydrogen bombs, which was developed in 1964 and 1967 respectively. The satellite was launched in 1970, while the intercontinental missile was launched in 1980. So this is defense industry. In the civil perspectives, So the locomotive engine, the steel plant, the construction, the Nanjing Yangtze River Bridge was built in the late 1960s. And many of the industries or the activities was actually reflected on the cash during the period. For example, the steel manufacturing worker, the manufacturing worker, the farmers driving a tractor, the textile workers, the Nanjing Yangtze River Bridge. So the steel production increased from very low, 500,000 tons, to over 30 million tons, so in the 30 years. But even though during that period, China still suffered from a shortage of many things. So accordingly, if you want to buy food or if you want to buy the clothes, you need some kind of coupons like this. And the full modernization. In as early as 1957, Chairman Mao Zedong proposed to build China into a socialist country with a modern industry, modern agriculture, and modern science and culture. And then in 1964, during the Third National People's Congress, Premier Zhou Enlai, representing the government, proposed officially the full modernization. So it will be achieved in 2 steps. Step 1. So starting from the next year, 1965, with 3 5-year plans, so which was 15 years, by 1980 to establish a relatively complete industry system, so making ourselves be able to independent, and a complete economic system. So this is preparation period. And then use another 20 years, so by the end of that century, to realize modernization of agriculture, industry, defense, and science and technology. If you look at the sequence, you will see that agriculture first, because at that time in the 60s, probably nearly 90% of the people are still farmers. So agriculture first, and then industry, then defense, and finally science and technology, which was not the case now. And in 1979, during the 3rd plenary session, Deng Xiaoping proposed by the end of the century, China will try to realize a moderately prosperous society. At that time, the quantity was about $1,000 per capita GDP. So that was the indicator, such that people would not suffer from shortage of food, shortage of clothes, and may also have some kind of home appliances. So at that time, one interesting thing is your family will have electric lights and telephones, bicycles, radios, and televisions. So that is basically the profile or the rough image of modernization by 2000. And then the next step, by the middle next century, which was the 21st century now, making China's GDP per capita reaching the level of moderately developed countries. There was no exact number because the number will be still growing. So that was the root of the full modernization. Initially, the idea as early as the 50s, and then formally proposed in the middle 60s, and finally revised in the late 70s. And since then, China started the reform and opening up policy until now. So it's for the full modernization. So I can divide this kind of over 40 years into basically 4 stages. Stage 1 was roughly from the end of 1978 to 1992. And then stage 2 is to 2001. Stage 3 to 2012. And stage 4 to about this year. So there was some indicators, of course. For the stage 1, the township enterprises emerged. Why? Because the rural reform liberated the laborers in the rural area. Some families with extra laborers, they started to get together to build township enterprises, small companies, small factories, to provide some manufacturing products for the shortage during that time. And the coastal development zone started. China tried to export things. China to attract international investments. And this happened initially along the coastal development regions. And the economy accordingly warming up, but it was still at a low level, but really warmed up. And the major achievement during that time is it ended the negative impact of the Cultural Revolution, which happened in the middle 60s to middle 70s. Stage 2, reform mainly in industrial system. And the government tried to reorganize the public-owned enterprises. And also, private sectors become prosperous in coastal regions. And infrastructure development started to accelerate. And the major achievement during that time is China stood firmly during international political crisis and the Southeast Asian economic crisis. So the international political crisis, remember, it was around 1990. And the Asian economic crisis was around 1997 to 1998. Stage 3 is reform and opening up is well linked up together. So the two linked together. And it promoted high and stable economic growth and harmonized the society gradually established. So basically the first 10 years in this century. And the one remarkable achievement is China's GDP stood on the world's second place in 2010. And the recent stage is refining economic structure, promote quality, high-tech, coordinated, green, balanced, and shared growth. So it's a better development. And also China proposed Belt and Road initiatives and started. So then I will go one by one. So for stage 1, the starting point was the third plenary session of the 11th CPC Central Committee in December 1978. The other milestone was 1992 January. So when Deng Xiaoping gave talks in Shenzhen. So during this period, most of the fundamental ideas was promoted by Deng Xiaoping. So in this stage, the main objectives is to look for a way to promote economic growth, especially after the Cultural Revolution. So China wants to find a new way for socialist development. So the approaches include reform to promote individuals as well as organizational motivation and try to promote their performance. And then to promote collaboration with international investment and international market. So the main challenges during this stage is how to treat the relationship of mainly public ownership of enterprises and the actual operation, because before that, most of the enterprises were public owned. But how to operate in order to achieve the promotion of motivations, and how to treat other kind of enterprises such as private, foreign, or joint enterprises, and how to deal with the accordingly enlarged income difference within enterprise or outside of different kinds of enterprises, because those kind of reform inevitably will result in larger income difference. So the secret for the success in this stage, is slowly but steadily explore the correct ways. So the words directly translated would be from Deng Xiaoping is feel the stone to cross the river. So it's step by step. When you feel it's correct, go one step more. Otherwise, move back. So the outcome during that stage is motivation was stimulated. Production greatly improved and economy warming up. But the lessons during that more than 10 years was confusion, because people's mind and also the system is mixed. So many people are confused. And individuals, enterprises, as well as government officers from time to time has hesitations, especially political hesitations. Or there was also some debates. So the story during that stage is try to combine China's labor policy and land resources with international investment and international market. So the step-by-step reform started initially in a rural area and then from Shenzhen. So Shenzhen, this was Shenzhen in 1980. It was a fishing village. And this was 1992, so the end of this stage. It has become a new city. And then many other cities, the red means special zones with special policies. And the other coastal cities are referring to the special zones for some new policy. So it's open cities, totally 14 open cities along the coast. And the second stage was 1992, January to February, when Deng Xiaoping visited Shenzhen, the city, the special zone city, and confirmed the reform and opening up policy, and ended the debate and ended the hesitation. So during this stage was majorly led by President Jiang Zemin during this stage. And it confirmed market-based socialist economic system. So no hesitations. And until 2001, when China joined the WTO. So the main objectives during this stage was to establish socialist market-based economic system and then connect firmly to the world economic system. So it's like practicing Chinese Kung Fu is you need to practice skills, and maybe also you need to reconstruct your bones or tendons. So you need to have a systematic reform and restructure. So the approaches was to reorganize public-owned enterprises on the one hand for public ownership, but on the other hand, market-based operation. So making them perfectly matched. Ownership, operation, separated but matched. And welcome and promote all kinds of enterprises, foreign direct investment or joint enterprises or private. And establish stock market in Shanghai and Shenzhen. And also negotiation to join the WTO. The main challenges during this stage was how to reorganize the public-owned enterprises for market-based performance, because sometimes it looks like a conflict. So on the one hand, it should be publicly owned, but on the other hand, it should be running as efficiently as private companies. And also how to arrange the large number of laid-off workers due to the reorganization, because many public-owned companies started to lay off workers in order to improve their productivity. So the secret for that success include no hesitation to connect the world. So inspired by Deng Xiaoping's talks. So it's no hesitation anymore. And coordinate all resources to rearrange the laid-off workers. So this was a hard time. Outcome is the enterprises become more competitive, more diversified economic structure, and GDP reached world number 6. So passed Italy on the year 2000. But the lessons during that stage include economy fluctuations. So sometimes too hot, sometimes it's going cold. So the government has to adjust the policies to keep it between the too hot to too cold. And it generated large number of vulnerable groups of people due to the restructure. And during that stage is the public-owned enterprises as the main force, but is combined with foreign or direct joint enterprises and also private enterprises. And during that period, in 1997, China taken back Hong Kong from UK in 1997, January 1st. And Shanghai, Pudong, also from a rural area, become a new modernized district of Shanghai. And this was the Premier Zhu Rongji at that time to fight against the crisis, helping Hong Kong to fight against the crisis. And then the third stage is from China entered the WTO to November 2012, the 18th CPC's Central Committee. And during that period is the scientific outlook on development, so majorly led by President Hu Jintao. And this is Prime Minister Wen Jiabao. He was visiting the reconstruction workers after an earthquake in Sichuan province. The main objectives during that stage is to building an all-round well-off society. Remember, after 2000, China has become a moderately prosperous country, but the next stage after that was to build an all-round well-off society. So not only the food, clothes, but all-round. And taking opportunity for a better and quicker economic and social development, because the system has been well restructured. So the next is how to accelerate the economic development. So the approaches include protect the vulnerable groups created earlier and optimize economic growth so that not too many errors. So think correctly and then do correctly and then grow quickly and better. And establish all-covered healthcare system covering 1.4 billion population. In a few years, this achieved success. And promote higher education and link to the world more deeply in that 10 years. Infrastructure development quickly accelerated. The main challenge during that stage is how to optimize growth and how to benefit all the people, including the vulnerable groups. So the secret for success is no zigzags. Zigzag here means you go away wrong and then you back and try another error and then back. So this should be minimized. So no zigzags, but focused for better and quicker development directed by scientific outlook on development. And develop a permanent market. Remember, all-round way of society, of course, include having a good living apartment and accelerate all-round infrastructure construction from roads, airports, railways, electricity, and so on. So all-round. The outcome during that stage its economy reached number 2, and apartment and automobile market became world's largest. So the vulnerable groups were taken care, and collaboration with the world tightened. The lessons during that stage is environmental problems due to too quick economic expansion. So in 2008, Beijing Olympic Games, and 2003, the SARS occurred in China, but not as serious as the COVID-19 this time, because China also took a very strong policy to eliminate the virus. The automobile market growth starting from 2002 to 2009 reached number 1 automobile market, because on that year, US is suffering from the economic crisis, financial crisis. So their automobile sales dropped, while China jumped nearly 50%. So became number 1, and then jumped another 5 million, nearly 5 million sales. So since that year to now, Chinese automobile market has been always the largest one. So the economic growth during that stage was driven by net export, consumption, and investment. And then goes to the 4th stage, started from the 18th CPC Congress, and the 18th CPC Central Committee was elected, and President Xi Jinping took the leadership from President Hu. So that represents a new development concept proposed majorly by President Xi Jinping. So the main objectives in the past 9 years is complete all-round well-off society building, so complete, and achieve all-round better and sustained development, and reach milestone of the first 100-year effort. The 100 years, the CPC 100 year from 1921 to 2021. The approaches include comprehensively overcome poverty. New development concept includes innovation, coordination, green, openness, and sharing. So innovation-based growth, coordinated growth, green growth, open development, and also sharing development. So the development result needs to be shared by all people or by all countries. So that is the philosophy. The main challenge in this stage was how to transform China's all aspects into a new style, sustainable one. So the secret for success was centralized and unified leadership to deepen the reform. And the outcome is economic growth more healthy, social development accelerated in all aspects, and China has become largest trade partner with over 130 countries in the world. Belt and Road initiatives are fairly well responded by many countries and nearly passed the middle income trap period. So this was the Beijing New Airport. Starting in 2016 January, is a village. After 39 months, so 3 years and a half, it becomes a new airport. This is high-speed train manufacturing. This was supercomputing system. Once reached the fastest computer in the world. And this was the high-speed railway network. The red one means the vertical networks and the horizontal networks. So altogether, China's high-speed railway network accounts for over 2/3 of the world. And this was the COVID-19 infectious disease hospitals. They were built within 10 days in Wuhan during the pandemic. So in these 9 years, the farmers has changed. So different working and living conditions of 2 generations of workers from rural areas. This was the past. So they came to the cities for jobs. They eat outdoors. they live in a very bad conditions. That was basically their hometowns. Now, the workers from the rural areas, usually they were trained with technology or working in manufacturing or service industries, and they live in many of them started to buy apartments in the cities and resided there. Even they come back home, the villages has become more beautiful. So the environment also becomes better than before. Like this was Beijing, typically is not so clear. While the clear one is basically none. And one indication is the use of industrial robots for manufacturing or for service. This is for service in the restaurant. And from 2014 to 2019, you can see that China's share for industrial robots installed account for around 50% of the world. It's the largest. And industrial output since 2011, China has passed the US as the largest industrial country. So the output has reached over $5 trillion US. And the automobile sales, this was also a good indicator of the manufacturing or consumer market. So from 2014 to 2020, China was always the largest automobile market. This was other Asian countries altogether. This is North America altogether, Europe altogether, and other regions altogether. So China's sales is basically nearly 1/3 of the world. Use of electricity. This was also a very good indicator of industrialization because industry consumes most part of electricity. So China's electricity was more generated in the west and the north because they have coast and also wind. So they were transmitted to the more populated and industrialized regions through ultra-high voltage networks like this. So this was the total consumed electricity in the past 6 years. So this year, the number for the first 3 quarters is green. So using interpolation, so we expect the whole year consumption would be over 8 trillion kilowatt hours. So this was actually quite surprised if you compare with other countries. For example, from last year to this year, the net increase, the expected increase was equivalent to nearly 75% of Japan's 2020 electricity consumption. And the average annual increase in these 3 years is this number. And this number was equivalent to nearly 1.5 UK electricity consumption. So the industrial system was really large. So looking at the future, the new objectives and challenges. So China already divided the time from now to the middle century into 2 stages. First stage is by 2035, 3 5-year plans, and then another 3 5-year plans to 2049. 2049 was the second 100-year milestone. That was the 100 years from when new China was founded. So the first stage in this period is the economy, science, and technology rise by a big margin and making China being among the most innovative countries. So this was the objectives. And later on, the next stage, the objectives is modernization of governance system and capacity, and making China being one of the leading countries in overall strength and also impact. So the driving force in the coming years include the 7 new infrastructure sectors, like 5G, new energy vehicle, data center, AI, industrial internet, extra high voltage electricity transmission, and intercity high-speed railway networks. So the philosophy of growth will be majorly on domestic large-scale circulation. So to cross the border of provinces, making the whole China as one big market, as well as good coordinated with international circulations. So that will be the philosophy for growth. Of course, there are challenges. The main challenges, I listed 4 of them. So the major one is the science and technology progress. So whether China could be achieve independence in some core industrial sectors. Recently, it seems that the semiconductors sector and also the fundamental software systems are the bottlenecks for high tech growth. The second challenge will be the energy problem. So China has promised to achieve a carbon peak by 2030 and carbon neutral by 2060. But now the composition, you will see that major part was relying on coal, oil, and natural gas. So it's nearly 85%. So the real new energy only contribute to 15%. But of course, this 15%, if you remember, the quantity was still super large. So this will be a very heavy effort in the future. The third challenge will be the population structure. So the left one was the 2015 aging distribution, and then by 2035 it will be like this. So the working people in the middle is getting less, while the older people is getting higher. The fourth challenge will be the world situation. So the industrial chain and supply chain instability. It may happen or may not happen in the future. That will be the external challenge. So, but the good advantage is the AI. So the summary for my presentation, the first one is that China's industrialization started from nearly zero when the PRC was founded in 1949 and has prepared an independent complete system in the first 30 years. But at that time, it lacks efficiency and connectivity to the world. And in the second, more than 40 years, reform and opening up policy gradually turned that into a new system, successful. After over 40 years' effort and also overcoming lots of challenges, a super large industrial system was established, with people's income substantially improved and making China closely linked to the world. So looking at the future, the current China has been pretty well prepared in most aspects for the second 100-year objectives, so by 2049. So a saying is, a better China would make the world better, because China was always promised to be a positive factor for the world. And only a better world could support a really better China. China needs the world in order to develop ourselves. So that is the philosophy in the near future. Thank you very much. I would be very happy to answer your questions.